The federal government introduced legislation this week aimed at combating foreign interference in Canadian politics. It includes the creation of a foreign influence registry, something long called for by activists.
Under this registry, all individuals or entities who enter an arrangement with a foreign government or entity and who undertake activities to influence a government or the political process in Canada would be required to publicly register these activities.
The legislation also seeks to give Canada's spy agency more ability to disclose sensitive information with more Canadians, especially if they're being targeted. A former CSIS director says this means the agency can be more direct, but warns it will be more challenging for the service.
The information they share may still not be enough, the kind of information that people imagine they should be getting. Now, whether they should be getting it or not is a question that the service is going to have to consider before it shares anything, and that's going to be tough to manage.
Okay, we want to get some thoughts on the impacts of this proposed legislation. We've reached Kenny Chiu, a former Conservative MP who testified at the public inquiry into foreign interference last month, and Cheuk Kwan. He's the co-chair for the Toronto Association for Democracy in China, and they both join me now. Gentlemen, it's very good to see you both again. Thank you for taking the time.
Good afternoon.
Hello, David.
Cheuk Kwan, I'd like to start with you because you've been urging the federal government to establish a foreign agent registry for a long time, and the legislation tabled includes a commissioner who must establish and maintain a public registry. We need to see some regulations, and we need to know who the commissioner is going to be. But what's your initial reaction to what we've seen here?
I think this is better than we could have hoped for. We were worried that the government is going to do some more foot dragging and including the whitewashing of another inquiry report, but it all turned out fairly well. I have some reservations about minor details, but I think certainly it get us in the right start.
Do you think, Cheuk Kwan, just to stick with you, that this will get at some of the core issues you've talked about on this show and in other arenas about pressure on diaspora communities, and certainly the things we've heard about in the Chinese-Canadian community? Can what we've seen tabled really get at the heart of those issues?
I believe in the framework it would. I guess it all depends on the execution and whether anything reported by CSIS are listened to by upstairs in the PMO's office. As we can see from the public inquiry first report that was filed a few days ago, one of the major items that Madame Hook has identified is that there was a bit of a disconnect between CSIS briefing and what the politicians listen to or take action for.
Okay, Kenny Chiu, foreign agent registry was something you tried to create through a private member's bill, and that set off a whole hornet's nest. I just wonder what you think of the proposal we've seen in this legislation from the government.
Well, I have always been saying that the foreign influence registry in one form or the other would be the lowest hanging fruit while protecting Canadians' rights in exercising their political activities, but at the same time inject transparency into these activities. And so 3 years ago, that's what I think. Today, I think we need more than just the foreign influence registry in order to effectively tackle the issues of foreign interference. And it's a good first step. And, I'm happy that there's a commissioner that is to be appointed, but I would prefer the commissioner to be appointed by multiple party, by Parliament, instead of by the cabinet, which given the situations that we have seen so far, may actually be biased or not. So I'd rather have this a nonpartisan issues that we could actually appoint a commissioner, and then we can proceed with protecting Canada first, starting with the registry.
Yeah, I believe there is a requirement in the legislation to consult with the opposition parties and the Senate on who the commissioner might be, but you're right, it is not a officer of the legislature appointment, I don't believe. That would be voted on by Parliament. But you say do more, Kenny Chiu, than just the Foreign Influence Registry. There are a series of measures to amend various, the Criminal Code and the Security of Information Act that makes it a crime for foreign powers to meddle in politics at basically every level and even outside of elections. So school boards, Board of Governors at universities, municipal elections, nominations, which was an issue in this. What do you make of those measures, Kenny Chiu, as someone who's run for office and been involved in it for a bit?
I like it. It will inject the necessary sunlight into many dark corners that are right now we are presuming that everything is honky-dory. But injecting accountability, it's a good thing. And it was a pleasant surprise for me. But what I like to see, though, is that measures that protect diaspora community from being exploited by these foreign powers. Imagine if they no longer rely on paid, agents to conduct their disinformation campaign in Canada. Now they're relying on volunteer. So, would that still be covered by the registry? Because there's no money changing hands now. Would they still be exposed? Would that stop them? With the fact that it's a foreign language, for example, being perpetrated around the country, would that not be stopped by these measures that the Liberals government are proposing? So all these questions are still up in the air, and I look forward to hearing the political debates and also legislative process.
Yeah, I guess the hope is that the whole patchwork, the quilt of the policies will capture all of these things in one way or another. But, Cheuk Kwan, bad actors always find a way around, legal frameworks that you put in place, right? This is the unfortunate reality of things, but warnings and resilience is one of the solutions people propose on this. And CSIS is being given the authority, Cheuk Kwan, to share information more easily with people outside just the federal government. How important is that measure in your view?
I think it all comes down to self-awareness. Now that we'll be given a fairly wide range of tools for us to kind of patrol the kind of foreign interference, but certainly I think self-awareness, as indicated by the last public inquiry report, is that, I'm sure CSIS knows a lot of what's going on. It's just that people have not taken action in the right way to make sure that we don't get interfered upon, especially the election. And I pointed out to Madame Hook's response saying, she did find fault with the nomination of Han Dong in terms of the process. But then the conclusion was that, nothing didn't change the result because it was a very safe Liberal riding. So whoever gets in will become a Liberal MP. Just like Kenny Chiu's defeat didn't change the overall result. But my thing is that one result change in one riding is one foreign interference too many. So I think people have to be aware of that. And getting back to your bad actor thing, yes, the registry, as Mr. Chiu has said, is a low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing we can do, but it's by no means a panacea to the problem that we have. We have to be aware that bad actors will always act as bad actors.
No, and Cheuk Kwan, you make a very good point, and Kenny Chiu, that's where I wanted to go next. That even if it's only one or two ridings and it doesn't affect the overall election, to quote Aaron O'Toole, he said, these seats can't be rounding errors in democracy. And we've talked a lot about East and Richmond East over the past year, and the concerns of you had about being targeted on WeChat by misinformation, primarily in Mandarin. The committee that oversaw the election felt it didn't reach the threshold for them to intervene because they couldn't conclusively prove it was foreign interference, and they felt it was contained and the ecosystem might have cleansed itself. But Justice Ogg says it probably had an effect, and it was probably China, right? So not beyond a reasonable doubt, but balance of probability. Do you feel vindicated by those findings that you were probably getting messed with in that campaign and it hurt your chances?
Well, David, with what happened on Friday, Justice Hogue initial report. And then Monday, the Liberal government had tabled these measures, including a registry. Yes, I feel like I've been vindicated, but it's not about Kenny Chiu. It's not about Steve's and Richmond East. It's about this country. We have been exposed. We have been operating, assuming that the world is honky-dory, it's all peaceful, but it is not. For ages now, the Canadian Security Intelligence Services and other apparatus has been warning our government that Canada is being infiltrated, and just like Judge Hogue said, the diaspora community, it's being exploited and being served as victims. Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghur Muslims, and Hong Kong activists. These are all people who are counting on Canada to be a safe place. And so I am hoping that the registry will be, like I said, the very first step in the direction of finally doing something instead of just saying something.
So, Cheuk Kwan, just to come back to the concerns you raised about Don Valley North, where the conclusion was that whoever was a Liberal candidate was likely going to win that seat. But if the allegations are true, then it means a foreign government played a role in picking who that candidate would be. Going back to my earlier point about the criminalization of interference in nominations, it seems like the sort of activity that has been alleged in Don Valley North would now be illegal with these changes. Does that give you comfort in the security of nominations in the future, that at least that deterrent is on the books?
I hope so. I'm optimistic that it would do the job. But the other thing that I wanted to raise is that I was at a technical briefing from the public safety yesterday, and we went through a whole slide deck. And the emphasis was on the word foreign, foreign entity, foreign agency, foreign this and foreign that. I just want to point out, and I pointed out yesterday, I said, you have to mention that many of these bad actors may not be foreigners. They're Canadians. They're maybe native-born Canadians. It doesn't matter whether you're immigrant or not. And then many of these bad actors may not have a direct kind of a route to the Consulate General or to any of the other foreign agencies like the Iranians and so forth. So it's that kind of thing that we need to be aware of, that any Canadian, if they make a certainly bad influencing act that harms our national security or our government or our electoral process, I think should be highlighted and of course should be included in the registry. I'm hoping that when the act comes out, we de-emphasize a little bit of the foreignness of this thing. Yeah, many native-born Canadians could be one of the players, with or without any connection back to a foreign government.
Gentlemen, we're out of time, but I want to thank you both for joining me. And I want to say it's a pleasure to have a conversation with you two and have you be kind of happy with where this issue is going for a change, because there's been a lot of frustration in the conversations. And I appreciate you for having them with me. And you, Mehmet Todi, Sherry Wong, Fenella Sung, others who have spoken about this issue over the past year or so. I hope this response can at least get you some of the change you've been looking for. So thanks so much, Kenny Chiu and Cheuk Kwan. Thanks so much, gang.